Where the drawings are. I don't know. I had a hard time opening them tonight.
Oh.
Let's see.
I say that well, very lovingly, who, but I'm saying, and she said, how do we do it? Wait,
Yeah. Oh, we got a bunch of people here today. Glorious members.
That's why we get paid big bucks.
George Reed is not going to make it tonight.
Just walk in. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you said that. Yeah.
Other drawings, we have to look at the next meeting, just ones that were in tonight's package.
There was the original stuff, I think it was in the package from the last meeting.
Is that relevant for tonight's meeting?
All right.
I don't think it's used, that's why I asked.
Yeah, can be.
Well, it could be, because it shows how they're gonna divide it up and how people are gonna sleep and how many people are gonna be in the house.
Yeah, so I thought they were backing away from. I just read something.
Very nice.
No, so we had our initial meeting
Yeah.
regarding 174 Traverse Street, May 19th.
Right.
And so this is for the portion of that meeting that was regarding 174 Traverse Street. This is essentially an extension of that meeting. And they've.
Why do we have it on package for tonight's stuff on Bay Street?
Because one of the comments that we had, and we'll get into that at the meeting, is that the condition of some of their other properties. So part of their answer was things that they would like to do to enhance those other sites. And they'll probably talk about that.
Okay.
All right, it's 5:30. Let's bring this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Planning Commission, City of Harbor Springs, to hear a special land use request. And Jeff, would you like to take roll for us?
Sure thing. Rick Tarchinsky.
Here.
Vanessa Warren.
Here.
Emily Dubay.
Here.
Bob Thoma.
Here.
George Pete is absent. Bill Mulder.
Here.
Mark Bidet.
Here.
Barry Lustgarten.
Here.
Al Dyka.
Here.
And Max Bassett. Here. We have a quorum.
The quorum, thank you, Jeff. And as I mentioned, the purpose tonight, the only thing on the agenda is to hear the updated special land use request from the Little Harbor Club for their rooming house. Thanks for coming back, everybody. And Little Harbor Club, thank you for your additional information. Appreciate that. And so the goal tonight, the reason we're meeting in a special meeting is not to delay this request. So it's our job to take action on it, to approve it or deny it. I guess we could table it again if something substantial came up, but we're really going to try to give them some direction that they can work on and get moving. Okay. Great. And the way that this is structured is we're going to open a public hearing, and with a motion to do that, we can do it. I'll make that motion. Motion to open the public hearing. Second. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good. All right. Little Harbor Club, would you like to start out and give us an update on what additional information you've brought?
Absolutely. So, back to the planning commission.
Could you introduce yourself again?
Sorry, my name is Jen Avery, General Manager of Harbor Club. I have our club president, Tim Jenkins, here with me, and here to update you from our last meeting and what we had going on. The request was to come back with our property improvements and our plans. And some of the comments that have been made were the lack of condition. We have started our two past presidents, our two past treasurers started allocating funds towards improving our properties that we are all aware are long overdue to improve. We're kind of taking strides, not all at once. And our board recently approved to go ahead and get into it and get things done. So brought back to you our kind of our 2-year plan, if you will, of improving our projects, some of which we've already started, some of which we've done since the meeting has happened, and kind of an update on items that were addressed of things that we have tried to improve 2 years ago, but we brought the planning commission's request. Those things we have been trying to actively improve, but we've been denied to do such. So we're here again to fill you in on what we've been doing, what we want to do, and we're going to continue to improve things for the neighborhood.
Okay. And you've given us a letter here with the improvements that you've got scheduled for each of the properties that you're operating. Okay. So we're still in the public hearing. I just reminded myself. So now would be the time where we could have some more comments from the audience. People who care to come tonight. Do you have any feelings? Chip?
Yeah, my name is Chip Everest, and I live at 4 Beach Drive. I also own 188 Traverse, which is right next door to 182 Traverse. And, you know, my view on this is, my knowledge, the neighborhood has never really made a formal ask for the Harbor Club to make improvements on those properties. And now that they made the commitment to do that, I think we should take Little Harbor Club has been a good neighbor to my knowledge. And the fact that they're making the commitments for this is very important. I think the need for employee housing in the town is extreme. And also, you know, the fact that Chief Knight, you know, when he talked about how Little Harbor Club really is not party to a lot of police calls and things like that, I think it's important. So I think we have a good neighbor, and I think we have a commitment from the Harbor Club, which we've never asked for, and we're getting it now. And so I would be in support of the motion.
Sir.
My name's Hank Schneider. I live around the corner on Glen Drive. I just have informational questions. Like, how many members do they have in the club? How many employees do they have? How many people drive cars? And when you build the new club, are you going to have new employees? Are you going to get new members? If you get new members, are you going to have more employees? If you get new members, new employees, where are they going to park? Okay, and why do the neighbors have to come to you and ask you to improve your properties? Doesn't make any sense. A good neighbor would be keeping their properties up all the time. You shouldn't have to ask their neighbors to improve their properties. Shouldn't have to have city council or planning commission or the Coulters or anybody else come to you and say, you know, your grass needs to be cut, your shutters need to be painted. They shouldn't have to ask you to do that. You don't have to ask them to do that. What's to prevent you when the club grows in population and you need more employees from coming to this body or any other body and saying, you know, the blue house at the end of Hankey, the people are selling the house and we want to put 16 more people in that house. What's to limit you from doing that? I mean, I can see the Coulters being the cowboys in the Indians circling them. How are you ever going to stop boarding houses from coming to you or people coming to you and asking to have boarding houses in the neighborhood, surrounding other people in the neighborhood? How are you ever going to limit that? You're gonna tell them they can't have more than 242 members, because if they do, they're gonna have to have 100 employees, and those 100 employees are gonna have to have 50 cars, and we only have room for 36 cars. And the rest of the people are gonna have to take a bus into town. How are you gonna do that? I don't hear you talking about the employees and the parking and those issues. Are you talking about what you promised to do in the next 2 years? And no offense to you, how are you gonna do that? And why do you have to do that? And why does this body have to do that?
Absolutely, very valid, absolutely valid comments, and rightly so. I would first address that the clubhouse issue is a completely separate issue. And tearing down the clubhouse is not, and rebuilding a club is not anything that's on the docket or anything we're discussing at the moment. I would say the club bylaws and articles of incorporation do not allow the club membership to expand. It is capped. It's not, we can't get bigger. So it is capped at 275 equity members. It will continue to be capped at 275 equities. It will not grow. Our staffing levels adjust based off of the needs of the club, and we do our best to do such. The blue house, if it went for sale, it's an R1A district, we couldn't use it for a rooming house. This is an R2 district, and that would be a city council zoning issue that would have to be changed. It's allowed use under special land use permission, sorry. So I think that would be a totally separate issue that the city council would have to address as far as what is the city zoning code. We are only trying to do what is within the zoning code on the special land use allowance of a rooming house. The other properties were there way prior to zoning, all of them. We don't plan on buying the blue house or anything in an R1A district or anything on the lake or anything whatsoever. Our staff is extremely respectful, and I will defend that 100%. So I think Chief Kyle will as well, of the area and of our local neighbors and whatnot. They don't break car windows out, which was discussed last time. We have a very good, respectful group of future leaders in America that we support 100%.
I'm
Mr. Jenkins?
Excuse me, I'm Timothy Jenkins. I'm the president of the club, a lifelong member. Without referring to specific statutes, et cetera, in 2019, we started a campaign to improve our housing. And we thought, well, let's start with the inside first, because that's where the people are. And we successfully did that. And then, of course, the exterior work, which was interrupted like everyone else's lives by COVID. We had 2 years of not being able to get a window or a tradesman. We couldn't get stuff done. As it's referenced, well, now you're starting. We had a plan 2 years ago to continue. Again, it was our commitment to get these things back up to speed, if you will. And we started and then had to stop. So I can't by a statute say, well, we're going to do this and this. This is something we started and then was interrupted by COVID. And we, of all people, believe that being a good neighbor is, this is our community. Part of it is anybody else's. Our commitment to this property, these properties, goes back, and this is just a continuation of that effort.
I would say the non-visible aspect that, our housing that we have over on US 31 in Conway is something that the town doesn't see and isn't on this docket. So that's more of a Bear Creek Township issue. We've improved that immensely, from drainage to parking to exteriors to safe porches, painting, appliances, fixtures, flooring, everything in there we've done over the past 4 years. That was where we started, which is our largest complex adjacent. So that one's done and taken care of. Now we're focusing our efforts back here.
Other comments from the public?
I have a question.
Yes,
How
ma'am.
many people are in these housing projects? How many people are actually living in Beachview? How many people are living across from us?
Housing projects?
Units. I mean, how many people live in Beachview? How many people are scheduled to live across the street from us? How many people are living?
From you, it's 6 bedrooms, and we would put a max occupancy of 12 if it were double occupancy for a room. We don't anticipate that happening ever, but if there was a couple, we put them into a room. You know, we're not gonna put bunk beds, we're not renovating this house, investing a ton of money into it to let it be, you know, a college-aged house.
So it's 12 people there.
Mhm.
How many people live across from us?
That is a 4-bedroom unit, so max and that would be 8 if it was couples.
We're finding that there's a change in the demographic of who's coming to work. People are bringing a partner. We're actually attracting people coming back. They're getting referrals, and we're now getting, well, can I bring my partner? And so in that case, we'll accommodate, you know, a couple. We're not sticking just 2 random people together.
And with these new developments of partners and items, so have you, some of our couples need their own independent space versus a floor or a restroom shared with other workers based off of their partnership status.
So how many people are actually then, in total, how many people in Beachview? How many people in the White House? So you're saying 12 and 8 next to us, right? So that's 20.
Mhm.
And then how many people in the Cook's house next to Chip?
So
Okay, 27. And how many in actual Beachview?
27 employees in those and 4 cars.
27 in Beachview?
No, in those, between those, you're adding those places,
Uh-huh.
there's 4 automobiles between the 2 houses. Of parking density, because that came up last time.
But how many in Beachview? You're not answering my question.
No, I'll absolutely answer your question, but I think we're on the topic of 174 Traverse Street, but I can answer whatever you'd like us to. Beachview is 1, 2. Beachview is 12 bedrooms, I believe. Beachview is an old hospital. I mean, it's a massive old structure.
So it's 12 bedrooms and how many people are you putting
If we did a
in?
maximum occupancy, we probably have, it would be 2 to a room. There is 2 or 3 bedrooms that do have, that can house 3 beds.
So in total, that's a lot of kids in our vicinity, if you will, right?
Absolutely. We're not, again, this is all stuff that's existing and going on and going to continue to go on. We're talking about adding 174 Traverse Street under the special land use.
But I would think that that's kind of part of it in total because of all of the people that are already there, right? Am I mistaken?
We're trying to do this the proper way of coming to you under special land use.
Any other public comments?
Yes, Bob Buckner.
Bob Buckner has raised his hand on Zoom, so if you'd like to take
Great.
a comment there. Bob, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you allowing me to weigh in with my opinions on this. So I'm Bob Buckner. I reside at 148 West Bay Street, immediately next to Bayview. And Jed knows me quite well. When Jed originally took the position he's in, I invited Jed to come down and sit on my porch and hear some concerns that I had about the behavior of the employees that are under his guidance. And Jed's a great guy. And Jed, I think, has a lot of empathy for some of the issues that my wife and I and the Castruccis who reside upstairs from us have encountered pretty regularly throughout the 12 years that we've resided in Harbor Springs. So I'm actually a little surprised to hear that Chief Knight indicates that there hasn't been a lot of concern about noise. I think that there's potentially a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we try and be good neighbors. And when I sat down with Jed, I don't know what it was, Jed, probably 5-6 years ago, I said, look, I understand these guys they're kids, they're drinking. I don't mind a lot of noise during the day. I don't mind that they're outside up until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, but 3 o'clock in the morning is ridiculous. And that happens very, very often. And perhaps the reason Chief Knight hasn't gotten a lot of calls is because my wife and I try and turn the other cheek. We do everything we possibly can to try and wipe out that noise. But ladies and gentlemen, we can't open our windows in the summer. In our bedroom is right next to the driveway that runs up between the two homes. And it's impossible for us to sleep. And this is even when the kids are behaving pretty well. You know, they come home from work and the first thing they do is, grab a beer and sit on the porch and just have conversation and occasionally laugh and, yuck it up a little bit. But this is at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it wakes us up. And that happens almost every night. The thing that is really disconcerting, and when we do actually call the chief, or more often we call Jed, because Jed has advised us to do that. Don't call the police, give me a call and I'll take care of it, is at least, I would say 3 times a year, it gets crazy, where the kids are outside screaming at the top of their lungs, singing Tiny Dancer or, banging on, and they have music outside. And this is not all the time. And we're not anti-kids. I was young once, I know what that's all about. So my concern is, we kind of try and grin and bear it, and we work with Jed, and Jed's been very responsive. I've sent him emails and called him on the phone, and he said, I'll take care of it, and he does take care of it. But it happens, and it happens very often throughout the course of the summer. And so my concern is that if we're talking about basically almost adding an additional 12 kids, or potentially 12 kids, or I don't know exactly what I was trying to do the math while you were going through this. But my concern is, are we just pouring gasoline on a fire? And I really, really worry about where these people are going to congregate, because I know if I was a kid and I had had a few beers and I hear a party going on at Beachview, that's where I'm heading. It's the coolest place in town. So my concern is that we're really going to exacerbate a situation that my wife and I have been trying to manage, working through Jed. And so those are my concerns.
All right, thank you, Mr. Buckner. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Mike Coda, and I live on Glen Drive. I submitted some comments before the meeting. But to follow up on what Mr. Buckner said, for 5 summers until the end of last summer, I lived in one of the condominium units at the end of West Bay Street, right across the street from the club. And like Mr. Buckner, my wife and I were not able to keep our windows open during the summer in our bedroom, and we had a white noise machine. Enough said.
Thank you very much.
I'm good. I'm Nancy, go to Mike's point. I'm going to add to that. We, in addition to closing our windows and running our white noise machine every night, it was late at night when the kids, I think they're mostly college-age kids and older. Most college-age kids I know have cars, so I'm not sure about for car count that I heard earlier for 12 kids, or the 2 houses combined, 24. It was when they're done at work, they are walking back, they're talking, they're having conversation, and they're having a lot of fun. But it's a residential neighborhood where older people are trying to sleep. And almost every night, even with our windows closed and white noise, we would know when work was over for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments? Now's the time. Jared, sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about it that college kids are going to be college kids. I would love to tell you that everyone was going to be perfect. That is, I'd be lying to you if I said that, right? And I'd rather just tell you the truth that they are going to be loud occasionally. That is at Beachview. That is not 174 and why we're here today. there is a lot of other things that we also get blamed for along that strip. The beach, there's other boathouses, there's the actual boathouse event thing that goes on. There's the park. There's lots of things that our students do get blamed for as well. I would not say, I'd be lying again if I said that it was never them, because they are on vacation and we want them to have fun. The beach has been part of the Little Harbor Club forever. It's been part of downtown Harbor forever. It's part of the nostalgia of some of the things that, you know, folks that grew up here remember going to, or remember seeing the fun faces there. Those are separate things from 174. It is a zone use in that district. If we are not abiding by city code, we're happy to follow this, but I think they're kind of two separate paths.
Take your point. All right, any other comments anyone would like to make? Anyone else on the phone?
No one else has raised their hand, so.
All right.
And Bob, by the way, Bob Bucker's been great to deal with as far as our neighbor. I forgot to mention, sorry, Bob. Bob has my cell phone number. He is
Sounds like.
a person right next door, which would be the loudest one of ours. If he's got an issue, he calls me. I will typically handle as fast as I can. I'll either drive down there. There's times where I've driven down there at 3 a.m. from my house. So it's not uncommon for it. John Coulter has my cell phone number too. If he's got an issue, something happens, call him, you know, we'll take care of it. So it's not a thing that we're just throwing up our hands and saying, we're gonna let our kids go wild here. This 174 is gonna be more of a mature staff.
Great. All right, is there a motion to close the public comment section?
I would like to say, sorry, excuse me, I'm Julie Miller and I live at 145 Traverse Street. And I am concerned about the increase in traffic and the parking situation. I do know that the tennis pros, Little Harbor Club boys parked on Traverse Street. They used to park in front of my house and now they don't. But I am concerned about the number of parking spots for the people on Traverse Street, and having another boarding house, I think, would just exacerbate the parking overflow situation. It's unfortunate that it doesn't have its own garage or parking facility attached to 174, but that is a concern of mine.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. All right, we have a motion on the table and a second to close the public comment section.
Who made that motion and
I
who
made a
seconded?
motion.
And Bob seconded it? Thank you.
Great. All in favor of closing the public input section, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, commissioners. Now it comes down to us, and we can ask questions of the applicants. We can talk among ourselves. We can do a number of things. The key on this thing, though, comes down to the 7 standards that are in the special land use zoning code. And we have to go through and assess whether this application meets those or doesn't meet those. And we're going to talk them through each one. We're going to talk about the meaning of certain words. We're going to talk about adjectives. We're going to talk about verbs. And but we'll get through it and we'll have a good, healthy discussion. So I'm going to encourage you to do your own thinking, keep your own notes, you know, on each of the 7 sections here. And then at the end, we'll be called on to do our own mental math and decide, does this application substantially meet all these standards? Does it substantially meet those standards? Does it not? Is it good for the community? Is it not good for the community? And that's the calculus that we'll each have to do. Then hopefully at the end, we'll have a motion to approve or disapprove, and we'll decide where we stand. All right. How about some verbiage? All right, let me take you through number 1. Proposed special land use shall be of such location, size, and character, here we go, that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood and or vicinity and applicable regulations of the zoning district in which it's located. So there are 2 operating principles here. One is the neighborhood and one is the zoning district. Would anyone like to weigh in on whether this use is in character with the harmony and the appropriate and orderly development of the neighborhood?
The use being specifically the boarding house.
with boarding house. That is the only question in front of us today. It's not Beachview, it's not the other properties, it's just, should the city grant special land use approval for this new?
Just to clarify a little bit, we have boarding house and rooming house as different special land uses, and this is a rooming house. One of the differences is rooming house is specifically defined as multiple people that are not part of a family unit living in a home together. Boarding house insinuates, I think there's language in there that there is a, let's say, a property owner or a manager on site at the place that is hosting people, I think as a difference. So just to clarify, we are talking about rooming house approval here.
Any thoughts, commissioners, on this first standard?
So I was seeing that it does, given that there's existing rooming houses in the neighborhood already. It's an R2 district, which allows them special land use permit that it's sort of, and that the scale seems appropriate. It's a house. It seems like it sort of meets condition number one, in my opinion.
And the house meets the standards of the neighborhood.
I agree.
I have a concern. Well, there are 2 boarding houses, rooming houses already. I think we need to look at, it's basically a residential neighborhood. And I think this is taken away from the residential side of it. I think 2 is, they're already there. I think a third is pushing it and getting beyond the residential part. If the state of Michigan got their short-term laws, they say we could have up to 30% rental units in a residential district. Well, with the number of houses in this area and already 2, I think you're already pushing that limit. And to add a third one is just going to be too many boarding houses and not enough neighborhood.
I'm not sure that to say it's a residential neighborhood is correct. You've got a club, you've got the Harbor Point entrance, you've got swimming pools, you've got parking lots, you've got duplexes, you've got a giant clubhouse, you've got condominiums. Notice I didn't say private residences in that statement. I don't think you're correct.
They're there. They were there possibly before the zoning, but it is a zoned residential area.
But it's not. It's an R2, right?
In this, all right, so here we go. This is the difference between neighborhood and zoning district. So zoning district is R2 on the side of the east side of Traverse Street, I guess it is, where this property is being considered. So it depends, it could depend on what you define as neighborhood. Some of these folks sitting in the audience tonight would consider themselves part of the neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely.
And they live on
it's a neighborhood of
the other side.
mix.
So where is the neighborhood? Does it include Bay Street? Does it include Woods? Does it include Glen, parts of Glen?
I consider a neighborhood the exact street surrounding with a limited view, all the houses on Traverse.
Okay.
And I also like to add that.
But what about all the
These
other
people-
stuff on Traverse Street that aren't
Out the block.
residences?
And
I view it
pretty
as a
selective in
mixed
here.
use neighborhood. Pardon me? I view it as a mixed use neighborhood.
Mixed use neighborhood.
There's enough stuff going on, and that's what it really is.
Right.
Bill, before we get into this sheet, is there a way that we can ask you a question as far as if it was denied, how would they treat this house? And obviously there's alternatives to a rooming house of having people in there.
I know what's in front of us is simply to approve or disapprove.
For the
this
rooming
land
house.
use, and probably not to ask for speculation on what else
Okay.
would be done with it. Okay,
Well, let's say that no matter what happens, that building, the size of the building. Okay, 5 bucks. Well, all my family from Ohio and New York is gonna come here and stay in that house all summer. There we go. It's not a small residential home that lends itself to other residential uses.
Okay. Any other thoughts while we're on this standard?
I was curious, people's thoughts on, how it is defined for the word character. When many of the other homes, I think of character in many ways. You know, whether it's kept up, whether it's, you know, the style of the home, the location. So that's the word that stands out most to me in number one, that we might want to think about too.
Okay, and where do you come out on that?
I don't know, because it's not, you know, it's not completed yet, even though we've seen some of the drawings, and it was at one point a residential home, correct? So, yeah, I just, that's.
It wasn't a single family, it
Oh,
was
was
a duplex.
Oh, it was a duplex, okay, good to know,
It was a duplex.
okay.
Originally, the home was built as a single-family home with an attached garage. Many years ago, the garage was converted into more living space and it was converted to duplex use, which is permitted within the R2 district.
Okay.
And it's been duplex use for a number of years.
There hasn't been an active use since the duplex use.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. And I just, we've been talking about neighborhood and zoning districts. So I did pull up on the screen here our zoning district map. The property is located right here, if you can see my mouse on there. This is this 174 Traverse Street, which is where they're asking for their special land use request for rooming house. The property right above it is the other one that we've mentioned, the White House that they also own. And then the beach house is right over here on this piece. So the subject for tonight is this one. And then as we can see, we've got the dark kind of purple area is R2 zoning. The condos right next door are in the RM zoning district. Across the street, we have R1A. So even though the neighborhood is broad and we have people here from various areas in here, that's the specific area of that R2 zoning district.
Thank you.
Put that up on the here so they can see.
Well, the neighborhood is certainly at a tipping point. Whichever way we go on this is going to determine how it goes forever. And I'm missing single-family residential neighborhoods in this city. When I moved here, it was mostly that, and they're disappearing, either by short-term rentals or whatever. So my big hesitation is to create boarding house road. And I think it'd be a shame to the people that have been residents there for a long time as single family homes to see that pecking away at that all the time. I think that's the wrong thing to do to those that have private homes here. And I would say that this will change. This will cause change, and it's inappropriate change. Thank you. Yeah, Vanessa, any thoughts?
We keep hearing about parking. I think parking can change the character of a neighborhood. And I mean, I get it. There's, I don't know what to do about the parking, but we heard that 2 weeks ago. We heard it again. What do we do with the parking? I just think that all those cars really do affect that neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Sense.
Two separate things. General parking and public parking is totally different from 174 Traverse Street special land use.
Yeah, I know. That's how I just try to wrap my head around character.
Absolutely an issue that probably needs to be addressed at some point. There needs to be more public parking in that area. I don't know how to do it or what to do it, but that doesn't necessarily affect our, we have like I said, we have 9 bedroom annex. And the house next to the cold, there's just 4 vehicles between both homes,
And let me ask a little Harbor Club something. So where will these vehicles park?
It depends on if we have vehicles. We very well may not.
Let's say there are 4.
If there were 4 more, there'd be 2 in the driveway and 2 could either park at Beachview or in public parking where we're allowed.
I think your point speaks to item number 2, where it does say location access of off-street parking. Just what does it do to that? I think by increasing the intensity of the use, it automatically will, put more stress on off-street parking. Even just for your 174, because you can't control how many cars show up. They're going to show up. You're going to put something with them. So in my opinion, on item number 2, specifically the parking, your point, for me, 2 fails. That it will have an adverse effect. Whereas 1, I think it fits in, but 2, because of the parking, if we read these things literally and address each one literally, then on 2, for me, it goes back and forth, yes and no. People have made some really good comments about it. It's been brought up by several people. So I have to go with, that tips me in that direction that, parking will potentially be an issue for the residents.
See, I feel also that, let's say an LLC came in and bought it and turned it into an Airbnb or VRBO, we'd have the same issues. And it seems like Jed's been a good kind of, as far as response to any issues and things like that. So it seems like it's a little more controlled by having them in there than, let's say, somebody coming in and, setting up a rental there.
Well, I think, we do have, limitations for VRBOs and how many people can be there and all that kind of stuff, which would limit cars as well. But, I think I understand your point.
No, and I mean, it is tough. It's like, outside, it does change that dynamic of it. Like it will be.
Yeah, that's where.
Running House Row, for sure.
And that's who we bought it from. We bought it from a corporation that's using it for an LLC that was using it for an Airbnb.
Yeah.
A glass rooftop patio and dancing all night, it is a lot different than us controlling our kids for 3 months. So it had already been an approved use to use under the last zoning from the last owners as an Airbnb short-term rental. Us owning it, controlling it, you having a direct relationship with us. I don't see the loss here from what it was already approved to be used as.
And the majority of our staff does not have cars.
I agree with you, Barry, on some of this. Even though we're not empowered to do deals, which is what we did last week, over this issue, if you clean up, yada, yada, but in spite of that, I think that the club has stepped forward, at least verbally, that things are going to change, that this operation is going to change, that they're going to clean up, that you'll talk to your people and do a little policing, yes, and make the best of this situation. That's all I know. It's either take a chance and hope that this works out, or say no, and we're right back where we started.
I would like to provide a thought here in response to some of what you said, Bob, and what you said, Barry. We do have the ability, if offered by the applicant, to apply conditions to an approval, right? And we discussed this briefly at the May meeting. And included in their packet with their information for this meeting was a letter indicating, and I put that up on the screen here, indicating a potential condition that they would like to offer, that any approval that we do for special land use, and I think this can be interpreted in kind of 2 ways here. One, we could look at it, Little Harbor Club, they are a property manager and they oversee that location. And or we could look at this with the potential to approve if it sways the difference on, let's say, one of the items on the 7 standards, if there's a section of that you're feeling they don't quite meet, but applying a condition might help sway so that you feel that it does meet, then it would be appropriate to, work with that condition. And in this example, the condition could be something along the lines of that even though it's approved for a special land use rooming house, there would always need to be a property manager in charge of managing the property, and or what they've had in their letter here, that when they no longer choose to maintain the property, that the agreement with the city of Harbor Springs, the special land use would lapse, is another potential option. And that was something we discussed before.
Is there anything that allows us to review this? Okay, so let's say this passes, that they come back in a year, and we talk about this and say, you've done a lousy job, we're gonna revoke that. We're taking it away. You were warned. There's no way to do that, is there?
I don't feel comfortable saying that there's a way. To my knowledge, when you do
You give it,
special land use, you're kind of giving it with that property in perpetuity.
And it stays with the property.
It goes with the property. Typically, it goes with the property, not with the property owner. They've included here the letter, if such approval is granted, the Little Harbor Club would like to note the conditional agreement with the city of Harbor Springs that the special land use expires if the property was to be sold to an individual or entity without common control. That's something that they've offered as a condition. So I think you could potentially put something like that in place with this. I don't know that we could say we're going to conditionally grant the special land use for further review in a year to see if it worked. I don't know if that is something that we have the ability to do.
one of my concerns with these improvements, and you're gonna take care of the existing properties, et cetera, is that next year you may be at the Longboat King Club and you may not be the president. And then what?
Our commitment stands. The board, our commitment stands at the club.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, good discussion. Thank you. Let's, let me just tantalize you with number 3. This is the one that talks about the proposed use shall be designed as to the location, size, intensity, site layout, and periods of operation of any such proposed use to eliminate any possible nuisance emanating therefrom, which might be noxious to the occupants of other nearby permitted uses, whether by reason of dust, noise, fumes, vibration, smoke, or lights. Any thoughts on that, commissioners?
Well, again, the concern is the noise.
Can't tell the future.
I would assume lights accompanying that, parties and such. So I think there's great potential for nuisance there. I think it's also nuisance that they have no control over, with people coming to this location to have parties there with whoever lives there.
We have absolute control, and that does not happen. If people show up, they show up as a guest. We have guest forms, we have security, and we have 100% control over what happens. It's not a free for all. Many years ago, it may have been, but it's not anymore.
Okay, commissioners? How do you feel about that? Any thoughts?
Well, we've heard people. Well, there's lots of woulds and coulds and should be's.
Right.
I mean, a B-52 airplane fell out of the sky.
But we have heard specifically tonight from several people that noise is an issue.
Mhm.
We have heard that from neighbors. And whether it's a bit, the big one or the smaller ones, that's a concern for the neighborhood. These 3 people said that tonight, and it's in some letters too.
And it's gonna be the same staff level as the ones that live right next to the Coulters. And if, John, if you have is there too many parties next door from you?
Pardon me?
Is there any parties next door from you that, you know, you gotta call me? And Bob is a different situation because he has next to Beachview.
Yeah, well, next door for years has been the manager, you know, before you got there, the club and their spouse or.
Oh, yeah, no,
So just-
has there been parties next door where we have to tone the noise down or whatever else, or shut the lights off?
No, I haven't called you on anything.
Exactly.
Since-
So it's the
since
same
more
staff
people
level that would
started
be at the
living
house
in-
next to them. Beachview is a different entity from what we were talking about. Correct.
I'm curious, when we're hearing from the audience and people that have written in. So as a commission, if they're upset about noise from other properties, because this hasn't been in their hands before, we have to base ours on, I know we're talking about this property, but they've never owned it or operated it as a rooming house before. So we can really only base on how they've treated other properties, right, that are rooming houses. So even if you maybe haven't had any, where it was managers, I'm curious. I mean, I hate to make assumptions. I don't usually make assumptions about anything, but it sounds like other properties, there have been noise and parking and other issues. And so I don't know how we're supposed to be basing it when nothing's happened here yet, right?
We're supposed to be basing this based on our best opinion of what we've heard, the
Yes.
facts that the neighbors have brought and the applicant has brought. And the wording is, I actually have to judge any possible nuisance emanating therefrom which might be noxious to the occupants.
It's pretty strong.
Yes, pretty strong.
Pretty ambiguous.
So,
No, absolutely. The one thing to keep in mind, that we try to say is a 12-month Airbnb, what has been approved as and was going to be used for, versus a 3 to 4 month employee-owned, operated rooming house.
there were a number of comments about that last time, that this would be preferable to having a short term.
But also-
But owning, I will just say this, owning, because you've said this a couple of times now, as an owner of a VRBO in Harbor Springs downtown, you don't have a lot of call for it, 8 months out of the year. 4 months, yeah, it's pretty solid, but other 8 months, not so much.
I've got one too, Mark, and I get 10 months, so it just
I
depends.
wish I
on
had
what-
yours.
No, you don't. I probably wish I had yours instead. But, it just depends on what it may be and how the owners advertise this.
Yeah, but there's no, I would bring that point up because, it's not guaranteed that the VRBO is going to be worse. Okay.
Not at all, not at all. I would say that the VRBO aspect is a more open-ended liability versus more of a secure ownership.
But the city has more control over VRBO, because if somebody violates the rules, we can fine them. If they do it 2 times, their license is gone. If we let you in there and people keep partying, there's nothing we can do about it. That's why we have to look at what might happen, not what we've seen happen.
Correct. And we're basing our partying aspect on our one home, not the other 3 that we own.
Okay, so that was the nuisance one. That's
Bill,
what I
this
heard
is
is
Victor. May I say a word?
That was Victor on Zoom.
yes,
Sounds like you
Victor.
would like to.
Victor,
Go ahead, Victor.
City manager.
Yep. Thanks, Bill. I just for criteria number 3, I just want to point out that it says that the proposed use shall be designed to the location, site intensity, site layout on periods of operations to minimize. It doesn't talk about necessarily that we shouldn't, whether or not, they will make more noxious nuisances such as dust, noise. It's saying, how can we design this intensity, layout, and use so that it minimizes those nuisances? So if there is conditions that the planning commission thinks are appropriate that can minimize those nuisances, then those should be placed on it. But it shouldn't be that, listen, there's there may be some noise coming because other properties have had noise on it, so we don't think this is appropriate. It should be, how do we minimize those nuisances based on designing the intensity and use of this property.
Okay,
Good. Rick's made a couple points about the lighting and whatnot. And we have zero plans of spotlights and outdoor lights and all that kind of thing.
okay. Number 4, to refresh you on that, proposed use shall be such that the proposed location and height of buildings or structures in location, nature, and height of walls, fences, and landscaping will not interfere with or discourage the appropriate development and use of the adjacent land and buildings or unreasonably affect their value. This is about the physical environment.
Yeah, I think the building site is fine.
Building's already there.
Right.
It's fine. That's a yes, easy.
Okay. Number 5, the proposed use shall relate harmoniously, this is the use, relate harmoniously with the physical and economic aspects of the adjacent land uses as regards prevailing shopping habits, convenience of access by prospective patrons, continuity of development, and the need for particular services and facilities in specific areas of the city.
It seems to me that this is going to address that, providing for a need in that particular part of the city.
I think it's yes and no. You've already got a situation going on down there with a club, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and residences. I mean,
I'm in agreement with Al that, it just seems like that's a yes.
Like it's appropriate.
Yeah, that to me is acceptable. That meets the standard.
Everybody can make their own decisions on that. Number 6, the proposed use shall be so designated, located, planned, and be operated that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. All right, how do you read this one?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything involved in this house that would bring danger to anybody in the house or outside of the house.
Nor do I think they want to, and I think that they would make sure that it wouldn't happen. They don't want the public health to be an issue.
I think this, they have control over.
Yes, this is where they have their
We
control.
tied in central dispatch just along with our homes, which go off with smoke and or dust and or whatever, heavy carbon monoxide. The fire department knows they get calls occasionally when someone burns some bacon. So it'll be well monitored and we have no intentions of ruining the public health.
Other thoughts? How about the word welfare? What if welfare was interpreted as quiet, single family use of your property and quiet enjoyment of your home?
So that's a big deal.
The dictionary defines it as the health, happiness, and fortune of a person or a group. So, as a group, the neighborhood seems to be not pleased with it. So I think that's going against the welfare of the neighborhood because they're not happy with it.
It comes to me as most of the issues that the neighbors have seem to happen at the Beachview house, and we're talking about like the one on 174, and the one right next to it hasn't had any issues. So to me, it doesn't seem to affect the actual welfare of them as that house. Might it add a couple more kids to the Bayview house or the Bayfront house? Yeah, but that's, can't control that, so.
And then there's welfare and then there's quality of life.
You see a distinction?
Yeah, a little bit,
Okay.
yeah.
And what's the distinction?
That welfare tends to go more into the endangerment of a person. And then there's the quality of life aspect. I mean, I would really like to see if we can't minimize some of their nuisances that we're hearing about, but I can't say that they, that this isn't designated and located without the consideration of public health.
But one thing, in the, construction codes and things like that, they speak to the health, safety and welfare of the public. And when they do that, though, it's more technical.
It really is. And then I'm just more of a technical.
I understand the point that, it does speak to lifestyle and
Yeah.
to your point too, Bill. But there's another side of it, which is very technical, what welfare means, in the built environment.
Great. And number 7, the proposed use shall not cause substantial injury to the value of the other property in the neighborhood in which it is to be located, and will not be detrimental to existing and or other permitted land uses in the zoning district.
Yeah, I think this is where it comes in. It's like, do you want to live next to a rooming house? If you're buying a house, it does come into play where it could affect property value.
I think it could too.
Now, what'd you say? I'm sorry.
I think it could too.
It could affect property. It could hurt property value.
Hurt property.
Got it.
It's not a bonus to anybody looking for a neighborhood to buy in.
If you were a buyer,
I wouldn't do
you
it
wouldn't look for a house next to a rooming house.
because I don't want people coming and going. I don't want strangers there. I don't want the traffic.
But what do you do about how it's zoned? I mean, can you put up, Jeff? I mean, how it's zoned, I mean, it's a real thing. That's a reality for these folks. And we're not here to talk about rezoning it.
I'm not sure I followed it.
I mean, this could happen to this house or to any of those houses that are around there.
Well, only if they meet all these requirements.
Right. But if we look at these requirements and what is happening in R2, how does anybody meet them then?
Not easy. Not with the way this is written.
No. Yeah, rooming house, it's a serious request, and it would have serious impacts on the neighborhood. The letters from the neighbors and the public really keyed on this value aspect, and consensus of the letters, I thought, was that it would have a significant, and I'd call it a substantial negative impact on property values for folks around it. Jeff looked up some assessed values of homes around and didn't seem like it had caused a problem yet, at least in the assessed value. We don't know the market value or, what would happen. And but my sense is sure that it would not be a positive for someone setting a price to sell their house and selling their house.
That also goes back to, as a group, we've talked about affordable housing, we talked about employee housing and things like that, just for boosting the area. So, I mean, we all, I think as a group, need to kind of figure out, nobody wants affordable housing if it's next to theirs, but they want affordable housing, so.
That's right.
And is this one house going to affect property values more than the other 3 that we have right there that are rooming houses?
Fair question. Okay, let's talk about it.
Aren't you the assessor?
Yeah, let's talk about
Then
that.
speak to us.
Well, what's the question?
The question is this highly detrimental to the property value of adjacent properties in your mind when you go out to assess all these properties next year? What are you gonna do?
Little
And a
Harbor Club
theoretical
has,
question.
Little Harbor Club has 3 other properties. Prior to this one, they have one that's in an R1A district that's zoned for single family use. They can't do rooming house at that location. They could do employee housing, but it would be limited to single family use. They have the White House right next door, which could be rooming house. They have the Beach Drive location.
No, what I'm.
Yep, I'm answering that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So they have these other properties there. They've been in use for a while. I don't see the values of the homes around them. We haven't seen any sales indicating that those are selling for lower values than homes in other areas. And I think one thing that we can even point to is what the Little Harbor Club had to pay to purchase 174 Traverse Street. It's not secret information. They paid $675,000 to buy a home that was virtually gutted inside that they had to pick up to fix. It's not a large home, and that's a substantial number, and it's right in line with a lot of other areas. So, if values were lower in that area, then I think we would have seen a reduced price in what they were able to purchase that property for. So I have not seen a measurable decrease in property values due to any of the Little Harbor Club properties that they own in that area.
But if you had to go out tomorrow and reappraise all these properties, would you appraise these folks' properties less because of this?
No, I would.
Theoretical.
No, we just did an assessment roll in March of this year with the new values for 2022. And I did not put any reduction on any of the homes in that area due to any of the Little Harbor Club properties.
So it's assessed value, not market value.
The market value's increased as
Well,
well.
assessed value is, to my best guess, 50% of market value. So, and hopefully I'm doing my job right.
Oh, yeah, but we've been surprised in the market. We know what's what they have. But great, that's excellent data, very helpful. And Jed just went down a path, and can you restate that? I was trying to recall it. It was leading us to the question of there were already 3 rooming houses there. And so would one more rooming house cause additional harm in property values?
In an already mixed-use district, next to the condominiums, next to the other condominiums, across from the public beach, next to a large private commercial operation.
Yeah. So your point is the damage is already, or not the damage, that was prejudicial, sorry. No, I strike that. Whatever, the die is already cast. So the neighborhood is what it is.
I mean,
and that one more rooming house won't make a substantial difference.
I think saturation does make a difference.
Yep, that's where I was gonna go next. And so how many rooming houses is too many? Or is this the one that?
What's your address?
145 Traverse Street.
Bill, if I may speak here on Zoom.
Yeah, Victor, go ahead.
So I guess there's a couple points to consider here. One is, I appreciate that Jeff went through the assessment, because when the planning commission makes a decision, they shouldn't be making a decision based on how they feel or the sense they get. They should be making a decision based on any evidence available on affecting property values, based on any records. The second thing is, even if the planning commission feels that there is some injury, and the word states it has to be substantial injury to value, not just any injury to value. So property values can decrease. Whether that's substantial or not is a question. But even if you find that there might be substantial injury, then the next question is, what conditions can we place on this property to make sure that there is no substantial injury? Can you place a condition to the intensity of the use? Can you place a condition to, parking or whatnot? So there's still an option, even if you find there's substantial injury, to say, hey, we can make certain conditions or restriction on this property to still let them use it as a rooming house, but to make sure that neighboring properties aren't harmed substantially in their value.
Okay, thank you, Victor. That was helpful. Can anyone think of a condition or a change or a modification that would prevent substantial injury in property values?
You mind if I throw out a,
Sure.
a suggestion, or something to at least discuss?
Great.
I think that, good conditions are conditions that the property owner would be able to do regardless of approval, that they would have a by right use to do anyway. And one condition or things that a lot of property owners do in Harbor Springs that I think makes a substantial difference is fencing and screening, whether it's through an actual structure of a fence or vegetative screening with arborvitae. That can go a long way in other projects with minimizing effects of many different natures to surrounding property owners, whether it's a view of the structure and potential maintenance that it may or may not need, whether it's the view of people sitting out on a porch having a beer in the afternoon when they've gotten done with work. It can even make a difference in noise to some degree. Obviously, it's not going to be a solve all, but I think that if the property owner is open to the idea of some type of screening, that may help alleviate some of these concerns that have been brought forward. Whether it's sufficient enough to mitigate the potential issues to enough of a degree to sway your opinion on whether it's appropriate for the neighborhood, I think is at least worth discussion as a potential condition, if the applicant is open to something of that nature.
And that's in our description of our property improvements under 174 as a full arborvitae is in print.
So they've already made the offer, so that's something I think worth looking at to see if that would have an effect on some of these 7 standards that we've reviewed and whether it would sway your feeling on how it may or may not affect the neighboring properties.
And since the last meeting, we replaced, John's got a whole bunch of new arborvitae next to his house. We replaced all the ones along Bay Street in front of Beachview that have been damaged in the storms, and actually shielded Beachview more by filling in some of the gaps also. Stand at the front of the sidewalk now, you can't look clearly at the front porch of Beachview.
Okay. And another possible condition could be, and again, I'm not sure if this would work in this case, but to reduce the maximum number of occupants that they're allowed to have in the house. That could be a condition. I don't know if they would be amenable to that, but if right now they're saying they have a maximum space for 12, if that number could be reduced, would that lighten the burden or the detrimental value on some of these, the effects that this use is having on the property values, noise, and et cetera?
Great point, Victor.
I thought of another possibility for the things we're talking about. I know you're asking for it to be a rooming house, but I was wondering, because you mentioned a boarding house has a manager, and I'm wondering if that would make anybody feel any better, if that was something that they were willing to do, where the property would have somebody managing the people that were there that might help with noise or parking or other things that the neighbors aren't for. And that could help with property value as well, knowing it's managed in a different fashion.
So there's a couple thoughts for conditions that might improve things for the neighbors. One would be a reduced maximum occupancy. 2 would be an on-site manager. Little Harbor Club, any thoughts on those?
What are the occupancy rules for short-term rentals?
2 per bedroom.
We'll follow that.
So that remains at 12 then. as requested. Okay. Then how would you feel about a house mother or a
I would feel differently about it if I was saying we were trying to create another beach view, but we're not. It's the same situation as the one next to John, and the one next to Mr. Evers behind me. They are generally our more mature staff, and we try to put one person in those homes that is somewhat, most of them all have a manager of some sort in there. So again, it's not beach view. It's a totally different level of staff members.
Okay. Okay then. Good ideas. All right, any final thoughts, commissioners?
One of the factors that weighs heavily with me and really isn't in the 7-point system here is the communication we've gotten from all the neighbors. We've gotten letters from very many people saying they're against it and how it's going to affect their lives and affect the neighborhood. And shouldn't that weigh somewhere with, as another point, or as we have open discussion to get opinions from people, but then we sort of are going to ignore it if that's not going to be weighed in as part of the structure here to approve or not approve.
My recommendation would be to limit your reasons for decision to the 7 standards. If you feel that people have provided comments and commentary that pertain to those 7 standards, then absolutely that's appropriate. But if someone brings forward a concern that really doesn't apply to one of the standards, it's very difficult for us to take it into consideration because the zoning code clearly states in regards to special land use approval that if they meet all 7 of the standards, we have to approve the project. So really that's what we're doing is we're reviewing the 7 standards and making a determination on the effect that it will have on the community by those standards. Some of the comments they may not have specified, my comment is in regards to standard number 3, but you have the ability through your review and listening to the comments and review of the standards to take them into consideration as you feel appropriate.
So this is different than ZBA, where we, at ZBA, we don't take the letters into consideration at all. We're not allowed to. We read them, but so what?
Well, zoning board of appeals is a little bit different, right? Again, the discussion at zoning board is really down to practical difficulty. So if someone brings forward a concern of, I don't like that house because it's going to be blue, then that really doesn't factor into whether the zoning board should be approving a variance or not. If somebody brings forward a concern that directly ties into the standard that the zoning board of appeals goes by, which is practical difficulty, reasonable alternatives, and things along that line, then we take it into consideration through the construct of what we're looking for when we're discussing approval. And it's just a different set of standards for special land use than a zoning variance.
So if I understand this correctly, in a variance role, you don't take into consideration the letters if somebody's asking for something outside of the room. But in a zone allowed use and a special land use, we do.
I think the best answer is, obviously, we're looking at all concerns and comments from the public, whether they're for a project or against a project, in relation to how they tie into the standards that we have to review for approval. For the Planning Commission, we're looking at the 7 standards for special land use approval specifically. On the Zoning Board of Appeals, we're just looking at a different set of standards, which is practical difficulty review. And so we take them into consideration as to how they may or may not apply to the standards that we're using for review. And they're a little bit different between the 2 boards.
Board of Appeals has more of an opinion. You can set more things where we have more of a 7 standards followed legally.
it all boils down to how well the comments pertain to the standards that are being reviewed. If I say I don't like the special land use for a rooming house because I hate kids, that really doesn't pertain to the topic of conversation, right? You know, kids are part of a society and whatnot.
Okay, let's get back to the case. Theoretics. And I'd just like to say, I found the letters extremely helpful. People were thoughtful and, you know, directed their comments to many times to the 7 standards. And I thought they were extremely helpful. So I thank everybody who wrote a letter on that once or even twice. Also, Victor has, as we're shifting this around, Victor had pulled out a couple of passages from the master plan, which we just approved, that could have applicability here. Now, the zoning code is the law of the land, but the master plan overlays the whole thing, and we just finished it. So listen to a couple of these. We were going to develop a housing strategy which residential parcels will be developed in a manner consistent with existing neighborhoods and will promote housing across the income spectrum. So Barry, what you mentioned, we did envision people of different ages, stages, and incomes having a place to live in Harbor Springs. So one could read these a couple different ways. In low density residential, we said that any new development should respect the established pattern of single-family neighborhoods and should be consistent with existing residential uses. Although this is in the multi-family district. We said neighborhoods should be quiet, walkable, and free of unrelated motor vehicle traffic. So there's some things in the master plan that can support the request or not, depending on how you read it. So, but Victor reminds us that we should often refer back to the master plan since that's our guiding document. All right. We've been through the 7 standards again, and I'm going to suggest, I would like to take just like a minute of quiet time to reflect here for a second. And audience, if you bear with us just for a couple minutes of quiet while I think about it. And you guys may not need to, but I would like to. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
As far as approval, sorry, Bill, is this, everybody has to agree on that, or?
Oh, Jeff, how many votes do you need in this case?
So special land use approval requires a 2/3 majority vote of the full planning commission, which means that if a motion is put forward to approve special land use, it would take 6 yes votes to pass.
Thank you. Max is a non-voting member, so 1, 2, 3, 4.
We have 8 people here.
So we would still need 6 positive votes. So after our study period, we're gonna need a motion. And someone can decide to make a motion to approve the special land use approval, or someone can make a motion to deny the special land use approval.
Okay, we're not gonna go through them again step by step and take a vote on each one.
Nope, you're doing the mental math yourself. Your
And we need to
calculations.
say to ourselves, yes, for all 7 of them.
You need to, what we're gonna do, we're gonna weigh all the
Okay.
attributes, all right?
Okay.
And make the decision that's the best for the community.
Can we delay the vote or table it? Want more information?
We really shouldn't too much. I mean, if there's a legitimate reason and a need to postpone a decision, and we've already done that once, we felt at the May meeting that we had insufficient information to make a decision at that time. And so the planning commission requested further information from the applicant, and we delayed the meeting and tabled it to this meeting. So if there's a specific need for specific information, then it can be appropriate, but we've already delayed it once and told them what information we needed, and they've provided that. So I don't know if it would be appropriate or not. Obviously, if the planning commission feels that there's more information needed, we should specify that.
All right, when you've completed the test, please put your pens down. Need your papers. All right. So this is the strategy part. Is there someone who would like to make a motion one way or another?
I'd like to make a motion that we take a vote to approve or disapprove the special land use for 174.
Great. I think we have to pick one or the other. So probably approve would be the clearest, right? Just let's have a straight up and down vote. If you'd like to make that.
Yes, that's fine.
What's the motion? So Rick has made a motion to approve the special land use request.
And may I make a recommendation and ask for clarification? So you're making the motion that you feel that it has met the standards for site plan approval.
I'm making a recommendation, we vote for it.
Well, my recommendation would be that if we're making a motion to
Jeff,
approve.
I can make a motion to approve it.
Second. And I would request that we include that it meets the site plan requirements and that it meets the standards of special land use. Do you wish to include the conditions that they've offered, which we have the letter from them?
Yes, with the manager on site and with the landscaping that they proposed as well.
Okay.
I didn't have your word on
manager
on site.
It wasn't necessarily manager on site, but that the property would be owned and managed by kind of a parent company.
Correct.
And then when they sell it, it reverts back.
Correct.
Right. We relinquish that special land.
I'd like to get this in the order.
I don't know what the definition of
We have a
common
firm commitment from you, gentlemen,
Absolutely.
that this is gonna work,
We let it.
that it's gonna be clean, and you're gonna take care of it,
This
that you're gonna,
as well, as far as how many
before we vote on this.
rooming houses that we're allowed to have in that area.
What was the question,
Are
Gary?
we allowed to put a cap that this is, we're capped out at 4 rooming houses for this area that we can't?
I don't know. We don't really have anything in the zoning code that talks about that, and special land use approval essentially says that we're looking at it on a case-by-case basis. So I think the next time we discuss it, if we're discussing something in this neighborhood, we would look and say, how many do we have and have we hit a theoretical limit or not? So I have a motion by Barry. Do I have a second?
So. And then we can discuss now. Additionally, if there's anything left to discuss. And Bob had a question, I believe, to the applicant.
Oh, and he answers. I just want a commitment from them that that they're gonna do everything humanly possible to make this work.
Don't forget, we employ all of these
I understand.
people, and we do have control and have a vested interest in maintaining the decorum that is expected by our community, of which we are all members as well. We are homeowners in the community, so we have a.
John, is that your name, John?
I'm Tim,
Jim.
Timothy Jenkins.
Jim, I'm going home this afternoon and I don't live next to the club.
No,
You have
I
to
do
convince
understand
these
that.
people, not me.
Yeah.
You have to convince your neighbors that this is gonna be okay and it's gonna be better than it used to be.
And some of us live very close to the neighbors too.
All right, we have a motion on the table to approve the special land use. It's been seconded. It includes the conditions that we talked about, which is the landscape improvements as well as the release of the special land use capability for the property if it ever is sold. All right, any other discussion? Should we go to a vote?
Like a roll call vote?
Let's go for a roll call vote.
All right, we'll start with Al Dyka.
Ooh, thanks.
Someone's gotta go first, Al.
Yes.
Yes? Barry Lustgarten,
Yes.
Mark Bidet,
No.
Bill Mulder,
No.
Bob Toma,
Yes.
Emily Dubé,
No.
Vanessa Warren,
No.
and Rick Darchinsky.
No,
The motion did not have enough votes to pass.
All right. Special land use is not granted. And what are the applicant's options in the future?
I feel that they can review and come back with potential another option in the future. Not to say what a recommendation would be, but I guess potentially maybe come back next year and they can show the community over the course of this year what they're doing to improve the situation, and maybe we won't have the same concerns or complaints next year. I don't know. I think that's beyond my realm as the.
Yeah.
But curiosity, this was a different voting structure than last time. Is there a standard voting structure, yea or nay, or last time we went through each one, you voted and you tallied it up at the end?
That they weren't really doing a motion to approve. They were just reviewing those standards, and that's how they chose to review those standards at the last meeting.
As a vote.
It was kind of it wasn't necessarily a vote to approve or anything. It was just kind of a vote tally when reviewing the standards.
I used it to try to get more definitive information on what people were thinking, since people were not commenting much, and I thought I'd just bring it up and make it clear. So, all right, so what we're saying is that this doesn't prevent the applicant from coming back at a future time if they should choose to. So we don't know. Anyway, the main point is that thank you for your application. And the special land use approval is not approved.
But it can be used as short-term rental, correct?
You would need to submit an application for short-term rental use, and yeah, just like any other property, same process.
All right.
But you won't have any control over sure.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.